It is that time. I didn't think I'd make it on time here for Dallas Cowboys Overtime on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel. That very handsome gentleman on the other side of the screen you see is the very on-time, punctual as always, Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr. I want to thank the great people of Window Nation for riding with us here on Cowboys Overtime today and every other episode this fall as we celebrate the imminent celebration and the parade for these 2022 Dallas Cowboys, who are led by the great Cooper Rush. Clarence, you were in New York last night to watch the Cowboys destroy Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. What were your first impressions of the Cowboys as they improve now to 2-1 and an incredible 2-0 under Cooper Rush?
I mean, it's hard not to be impressed with Cooper Rush. I mean, it's just hard. I mean, what he's done. He's the first Cowboys quarterback to start 3-0. And he moved to 3-0. He's the third Cowboys quarterback in franchise history to start 3-0, joining Roger Staubach and Jason Garrett. And Jason Garrett, one of his stars doesn't count because I think he threw a couple of passes and was replaced, but because he started the game, he got the win. But what he's done is amazing. But the thing that I keep going back to is this Cowboys defense, which may be one of the best we've seen around in a long time. They've only given up 3 touchdowns in 3 games, and it seems like this defense, as I thought in training camp, was the best part of the team in training camp. Is what's carrying the Cowboys.
When I think when Dak Prescott suffered that injured thumb there at the end of Week 1, the terrible loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Dallas Cowboys were committed to Cooper Rush, the thought was, okay, maybe they can win a game. And however many games Dak was going to be out, because those first reports suggested maybe 8 games without Dak because of the injured thumb. Well, then the timeline continued to change and continued to shrink. And then Cooper Rush looked okay against Cincinnati in a win against the Bengals, which is now a little bit more than a week ago. Now, however, when you watch him operate the offense, it is crush time. Cooper Rush looks like a pretty good backup NFL quarterback, and nothing like the guy that we saw bumble around in multiple preseasons to the point the Cowboys gave up on this guy. So much so that the New York Giants picked him up, and then they gave up on him. And the Cowboys brought him back because, well, we know who he is. We kind of like him. The starting quarterback really likes him. He's a good guy. We'll let him warm the seat until we find somebody else. He's 3-0 as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And whatever you thought of him is gone. He looks like he will stick in the NFL for a little while. All credit to Cooper Rush.
Well, yeah, and let's just think about that. And people are not really understanding the situation with Cooper Rush, because the Cowboys cut him in 2020 because they had Andy Dawson as a backup quarterback. Had a proven backup quarterback. They invested in a backup quarterback, and they drafted Ben DiNucci to develop. And so, it wasn't that Ben DiNucci was better than Cooper Rush, but they already had a backup quarterback, so they cut him. He goes to the Giants. If Dak Prescott doesn't get hurt, Cooper Rush may not be back in this league. And
you don't think he'd be on somebody's practice?
Well, he wasn't. He was on the streets.
No, you're right.
Because he got cut by the Giants, was on the streets, and the Cowboys signed him back out of desperation because Dak got hurt, and then Dalton got hurt, and then you got, we had Ben and all that other stuff. There's a good chance he's not anywhere, not in any system. Or may sign with someone else that doesn't come back here, a place he knows and comfortable and all that other stuff. But, this may not happen. Just think about how crazy that was. And then consider this. The Cowboys cut him before the season.
Yeah.
They valued him so much that they cut him, to get other guys on the roster. Now, they had a, quid pro quo deal with him to say, hey, we're going to bring you back. But when you cut a guy and say somebody offers you way more money than the Cowboys can spend, that's something you consider. They still chanced losing him before the season. Okay?
Well, I think about several years ago when Cooper Rush was with Jason Garrett, and everybody liked him, and you've been around backup quarterbacks. People got to like you if you're going to stick. and everybody liked him for all the right reasons. But man, nothing we had seen in preseason when we had watched him play, it just looked like a guy he had plateaued, that he had hit his ceiling. And now you can kind of say, with hindsight, well, probably a byproduct of who was around him on the field when he was playing.
I was getting ready to go there.
Yeah, but I think about too. You mentioned they brought in Andy Dalton. That made sense. They drafted Ben Bonucci. Okay, why not? But then the other one too. They drafted Mike White with the idea out of Illinois several years ago. They wanted Mike White to win that job, and he didn't, because Cooper Rush just beat him out. Now he's here. He's 3-0. He's 2-0 this season. The Cowboys are 2-1. They've got a bad Washington team coming to AT&T Stadium on Sunday. Clarence, Dak Prescott looks like he's getting really, really close. But the way Cooper Rush is playing, any chance they're just going to sit tight on Dak for another extra week and say, you know what? We're doing okay right now. Just hang tight for another week. Or when he's ready, it's go time.
Yeah, I think that the angst, and we talked about it last week, the angst that we got to get Dak Prescott back as soon as possible was alleviated. You had a sigh of relief last week when you beat the Bengals. And now you got 2 wins and you're 2-1 and you're still in the thick of things. You know, you can be cautious. You can do the right thing. You don't have to rush Dak back. Now, I don't think the Cowboys doctors will put anybody on the field unless they're ready to go. And I think the Cowboys would try to be smart about the situation and do what's right about Dak for the long term, because you don't really want it to worsen. But any thought in your mind that, hey, we got to get him back out there, that's been alleviated. That's been removed. And yeah, there's a great chance the Commanders are awful. Okay. Yep. You know, and the fact that he just got his stitches out on Monday, there's little chance he's going to play in a short week. You know, he did throw the ball before the game last night, Monday night, and he can't grip the ball. We talked to him, but it's about pain. It's about all the other stuff. How well can he throw? How well can he grip it? You know, the rust he's had since he's been out. You can table that for at least another week. I see Dak coming back against the Rams on October 9th, or possibly the Eagles, you know, October 16th. If you want him at his best against the Eagles October 16th, you may start him against the Rams on October 9th. But definitely not this week. And you know, again, Cooper allows you to do this. And the great thing about Cooper, you know, it's one thing to play well at the start of the game when everything is pristine, you know, and you got the script and you're calling the stuff you want. But in crunch time, clutch time, all the other stuff, that's when the game really slows down for him. I mean, and that's what they love about him is his makeup, his mentality. The game, the situations aren't too big for him. You know, the Giants took a lead. The crowd is going crazy. Okay, it's going crazy in New York. They think, oh, we got him now. Barkley just scored. They took the lead. Cooper Rush leads them on 2 straight touchdown drives. Goes 12 or 13 for 126 yards. Convert a 4th and 4. You got the CD spectacular catch. You got it just slowed down for Cooper. The situation was not too big for him, and that's what you like. The guy wins games. Certainly, the defense kept him in it.
For sure.
When the plays,
but he played really, really well.
When the plays were made, he made, and they started stats weren't great. Threw for 235 or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, Clarence, his receivers there in that first half,
they let him down.
Maybe even 3.5 quarters, they didn't help him out at all.
No, they left meat on the bone. The Cowboys left meat on the bone for sure. But yeah, Cooper allows you to do what's right by Dak and by the team. You know, obviously when Dak is ready, he's going to go. Dak is the starting quarterback. You know, I talked to Dak last night, and you know he's Cooper's biggest cheerleader. There people don't, because I'm gonna tell you what Jerry started last week was already smoldering. Okay, I'm just trying to. Yeah. There are people that just don't. You know, people are holding. Well, he was sucked against Tampa Bay. Well, that's Tampa Bay's defense. Okay, Tampa Bay is stuffing everybody. You know, and that was certainly a different situation. The game plan is if they ran the ball 30 times. Well, last time they ran the ball 30 times with Dak Prescott. They've been trying to throw the ball over the park. I mean,
rookie year.
Change the game plan, change how they do things. But what Jerry started is it was already smoldering because there's a segment that never believed in Dak Prescott. I think he's overrated, all of those stuff. I got people arguing on my Facebook page about Dak needs to sit down and let Cooper Rush do his job.
Yeah, you know what, Claire, hang on. they said the same thing about Tony Romo. From the time Tony took over Drew Bledsoe's job in mid-2006 to the time Dak Prescott took his job in 2015, they said the same thing. You always want the flavor of the week, the new guy, the guy you think is perfect because this guy stinks or whatever else. Dak's going to hear that until he wins a Super Bowl, and even then,
I agree.
But
I guess my point I was making is that, I was talking to him last night, and he said that I'm Cooper Rush's biggest fan. I want him to keep winning, no matter what hell might happen around here.
All right, with that, segue.
I'm just saying that he knows hell can happen.
Yeah, he does. Well, speaking of hell, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about heaven, and that is the great people at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no payments and pay no interest until 2025. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, we are back with Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Mac Engel. That's Clarence E. Hilt Jr., who was in New York last night for the Dallas Cowboys win against the New York Giants. At the game, in attendance, one of the greatest defensive players of all time, LT. I'm talking about the original LT before LaDainian Tomlinson. Lawrence, wait a minute. What we got? Oh, gotcha. I thought you were trying to do a timeout. I think you're timeouting me. I got you. LT. I loved LT as a kid growing up. So LT was at the game last night. Looks like he's gained a few pounds. It's all right. No criticism. And as he's walking off the field, a true gem of a reporter and human being in this market, the great Arnold Payne, longtime cameraman for WFAA, gets Lawrence Taylor walking off the field. And he asks him the question that we all want to ask, which is, what do you think about Micah Parsons? Because Micah has been compared a lot to Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor says, pretty impressed by Micah. I'm paraphrasing here. He says, but let's see if he can do it for 13 dang gun years, or however LT phrased it. Clarence, Micah Parsons didn't get any sacks last night. Everybody else did. But this is a bad, bad man. And this defense, you said at the top, this defense, these first 3 games, and really the last 2 weeks against the Bengals and then last night against the Giants, this is the best-looking defense, doomsday-ish defense that we have seen this century. And maybe since you've started covering this team, they killed that Giants offensive line, and they turned Daniel Jones into a poor man's version of Lamar Jackson. The only difference was Lamar Jackson's a badass running everywhere he wants. Daniel Jones was running for his life, and he happened to get a lot of big chunk plays out of it. Clarence Tank Lawrence looked great. Dorrance Armstrong looked good. Micah Parsons is a beast. Who's going to stop these guys?
Yeah, I mean, that defense line, first of all, they stopped the run for most of the game. Certainly,
there was one run.
Barkley had one run. But they stopped the run for most of the game, and they got after the quarterback, and they were relentless. I mean, I think that, they had more quarterback pressure than any team in the league. And I think Daniel Jones was pressured more than any time in his history. The Cowboys are leading the league in sacks. And again, Michael Parsons didn't get one last night, but he had, I guess his win rate was off the charts. He just didn't get there. He had a couple of pressures. I mean, he embarrassed the guard on one play. You're talking about a 360-pound man that just got run over by Michael Parsons. And yet Demarcus Lawrence finally got into the sack column with 3 sacks. Tying his career high for a game. He went out with a foot injury, came back, but that pressure, that defense was relentless. And then you add in, everybody's talking about, this year, last year, certainly had a lot of interception last year. And that's what I keep trying to tell people. It doesn't translate. And certainly Trevon Diggs had 2 picks drop last night. They would have caught 3. He would have caught last year. But at the end
the one on the sideline, the pick 6, I don't know how it happened. Like,
but he would have,
physically, I don't know. I'm like, how did that happen? Because the receiver came up with the catch, and you watch, and you were there when you're watching on the screen, like, oh, that's 6. and then it goes right through his hands. And
Right,
you're right, last year, he catches it.
Yeah, he catches that. But at the end of the game, he gets his pick, and it closes out the Giants. But, the defense, the safeties, everybody's playing well. And people don't talk about Anthony Brown. They're all playing well. It's not just, Giants got course for receiving course. They certainly had to drop passes. But what they did against Cincinnati last week with their top-notch receiving core, they've really stood on their heads as a receiving core. As a secondary and played well to go with that pass rush. That's relentless with Micah coming from everywhere, and you got Demarcus Lawrence. This defense, again, tied a franchise record. Only 3 touchdowns allowed in the first 3 games of the season. I mean, they're holding people to field goals. Nobody's getting into the end zone, and there's no way that Washington gets in the end zone this week. It might be even worse. And poor Carson Wentz, he's going to be running for his life because he got killed last week by the Eagles defense. The defense is what's keeping it in the game, and clutch Cooper Rush is winning it.
Not only did they keep other teams from scoring touchdowns, it's not like they've done this 3 straight weeks against Daniel Jones and the Giants. They did against Tom Brady. They lost, but it wasn't like Tom Brady was just zipping up and down the field. Now, the one thing Tom Brady, and I've tweeted this, and you and I had a back and forth about it. Tom Brady's finally starting to look a little bit older, but the defense gave him a shot for a long period of that game. The offense did nothing. Then they really gave it to Joe Burrow and the Bengals in that offense. And there's one player in this that we're not talking about that I keep hearing his name, and it's the first time. Well, this would be a little disservice to Jaron Kearse, who's currently out. Donovan Wilson looks really good. And he may not be dynamic in coverage, but as a player and as a safety, a position where the Cowboys have not really had consistent production, and it's almost been a liability. Donovan Wilson, former 6th-round pick out of Texas A&M, that guy looks like a player. He made plays near the line of scrimmage. He just looks like one of those impact safeties that we have not seen around here in a long time.
No, he's a tackler. He's a hard hitter. And that's what he does. Donald. He tackles and he gets you on the ground. And he his issue. He only has one issue. He can be undisciplined. He gets a lot of penalties. He had a stupid, personal foul penalty late in the game that actually helped the Giants last night when he slapped the ball out of the receiver's hands after he went out of bounds. And he had a late hit on the quarterback last week. But but physically, he is a player. He will get the ball. He finds the ball. He's always around the ball. He's always around turnovers and fumbles and whatever else. And he's a hard hitter for sure. And so that safety group, I've talked about it before the season, that safety group with Kearse and Wilson and Hooker, that's as deep and as talented a safety group as the Cowboys have had around here since forever.
You mentioned the Giants' offensive line. They were about as bad as, they might have been as bad as the Bengal offensive line. And, some of it has to do with the fact that the Cowboys' defensive front 7 has been so good that they're making the Bengals' offensive line look that bad, or the Giants' offensive line look that bad. Conversely, the Cowboys' offensive line looked pretty good. Tyler Smith at left tackle, rookie left tackle. It hasn't been perfect, but it's been this. Every now and then there's been a little bit of a bump, but the 1st-round pick out of Tulsa, he's acquitted himself quite nicely, and every play he makes, it makes it look like they really don't need Tyron Smith. The left guard position last night, Jason Peterson, 40-year-old that they signed off the street. As a left guard, that's one of the biggest left guards I've ever seen in my life. Right tackle, Terrence Steele, he's played pretty well. As an offensive line, they look like they're pretty good. And they gave Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard enough room that Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore could call the game the way they wanted to call it. Clarence, I got to tell you, it looked like to me from a play calling standpoint, the way Tony Pollard carried it, the way Zeke carried it, although not great, but pretty good, that
I think Max froze, but what he's trying to say, you froze up a little bit, but that's okay. I got you.
Try that again. I lost you there for a second.
That's okay. 2 things. Okay, let's go back to the offensive line for a second. And when you talk about the Giants' offensive line, they got a right tackle, Evan Neal, 1st-round pick, top 10 pick from Alabama. Okay, let's contrast him with poor Tyler Smith, North Crowley, who was like a 2-star prospect. Evan Neal went to IMG Academy, 5-star, can't miss kid, top 10 pick, went to Alabama, won that championships. You got Tyler Smith, poor kid out of North Crowley, 2-star prospect, was lucky to get a scholarship to Tulsa, late in the first round pick for the Cowboys. Who looked better last night?
Not even a discussion. Evan Neal looked terrible. Like, I
know he was going against Michael Parsons and Demarcus Lawrence, but Tyler Smith went against them in training camp. He didn't look like that.
No,
he didn't look like that. He's gone against a pretty good offensive lineman, pass rushers. He's been in the league the first couple of games, and he's acquitted himself very well. So kudos to the Cowboys for making the right choice and picking a very good, talented, and potential staple at left tackle in Tyler Smith. And you hit the Jason Peters. That's a huge human being. He's never played. He doesn't really. He's a left tackle. 19 years, 11 years with the Eagles. 9-time Pro Bowler left tackle. Future Hall of Famer at left tackle. Tyler Smith was playing so well that they decided we need help at guard. Matt Farnick has been okay, but he's been the weak link on the offensive line. We can to get the best 5 on the field. Let's see what he can do, what Jason Peters can do at left guard. And he didn't play a lot with his first game. They just wanted to give him some snaps. He played 14 snaps. First play, he's out there.
Oh, yeah.
First play, Tony Pollard goes 46 yards behind, Jason Peters and Tyler Smith. Those two guys on that left side. Zeke Elliott won a 27-yard run by Jason Peters and Tyler Smith. Tyler Smith blocked 3 people on that play. If you go back and look at that play. I mean, when he gets his legs on them and they get to put him out there for a longer period of time, that's going to open things up for the run game. And yes, people keep hollering about Tony. We need to see Tony more. We need to see Tony more. You need to see both of them. They're on the field together. The opening play was a jet sweep with Zeke on the field and Tony coming around the end for 12 yards in the opening play. They're going to use them both. It's not about Tony needs to be out there more than Zeke. It's about using them both. Tony's not a guy you want to give 25 carries to. When he makes these big runs and darts through the line because his legs are fresh, you don't want to wear him down throughout the game, and you certainly don't want to wear him down throughout the season. He's never carried the load in his entire life. You want to do what's best by Tony, and Zeke is still very productive. I mean, Tony had a great game, but Zeke still was averaging 5 yards a carry last night.
He finally broke a big one. He finally had a good one.
Yes.
He got a little
behind that left side, behind those guys. He's still. It's about using them all. It's a tandem. It's not either or. We get so caught up in either or. It's a tandem.
Well, because people, even my guy, Emmanuel Acho, your guy, he's like, you got to start Pollard. This is last year. He's like, you got to start Pollard. You got to start Pollard. And I'm with you on this one. No, you don't. Just he's not a fourth quarter guy. If you've given him 25 carries a game, he's not going to be. He's just not. We know how that script goes. One more thing before we move on to the final subject here on Cowboys Overtime. You mentioned it, I think, on Twitter. Dalton Schultz, the starting tight end, was out last night. And so was Michael Gallup. Both of these guys may be back for Washington. Gallup's return will obviously be a big deal. He tried, not quite ready yet from his ACL injury, but he could be ready as early as Sunday against the Commanders. Still hate that name. The 2 tight ends that played instead of Dalton Schultz can do some blocking. Peyton Hendershot, Jake Ferguson, whatever you say about Dalton Schultz as a pass catcher, these 2 other guys look pretty good as blockers, even though they're really young. I know they're not big. They're both Big Ten guys. Probably not a coincidence. Both those guys helped out a lot on that line. They can block.
No, they blocked, and Hendershot is fast. He can catch the ball. He can make plays down the field. Dr. Schultz needs to come back because those guys and
they're gonna take a shot.
And shout out to Linda Wells, the tight ends coach. He's been talking those young guys up all off season, all throughout training camp. And it's one thing to talk up Ferguson, the draft pick, but he's been all over Hendershot ever since he came here. He liked what they have at Hendershot, and certainly he is showing he made the team out of camp, and certainly showing word that he can be a player and combined with Ferguson to give them a young tandem at tight end moving forward.
Last subject here on Cowboys Overtime, because we had talked about this a lot all off season, Clarence, that by the end of September, Sean Payton's shadow would be over AT&T Stadium, and specifically Mike McCarthy. Well, the Dallas Cowboys are 2-1 after 2 games where their starting quarterback is not available. Now they got Washington coming in on Sunday, and suddenly we're not hearing a lot about Sean Payton these days. You and I are both on the same page about this. You got to give Mike McCarthy credit. You heard about it, didn't necessarily like it. Clearly, this is a man comfortable in his own skin, and the Cowboys right now are doing very well despite some challenging circumstances. If you're going to kill McCarthy for this, that, and the other, you got to give him credit when things are going right, especially when things aren't. He's not dealt a full deck, which Cowboys aren't. They're still winning. You got to give McCarthy, Kellen Moore credit. They've done a nice job.
No doubt, and it's decision making, the gamble, that fourth quarter, 4th and 4, big time situation. You're on your own 41. The game is, you're
talking about the game against Cincinnati?
No, I'm talking about last week. Cincinnati, that was in the first quarter. That was the first drive of the game. Fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it confused. Yeah, the CeeDee Lamb pass. Yeah.
Yes, it's you're on the road. It's 4th and 4 from the Bengals 41. Okay, if you miss it, you give them a short field and go back and certainly take the lead and really be the impetus to win. But the Cowboys went for it. He talked about, I like the way our offensive line was blocking, I like the way we were playing, I like the rules, and I like the play, the way Kellen Moore's play calling, and certainly you got a backup quarterback throwing to a receiver who had a questionable game for most of the game, but yet CD was right on the sticks, and Cooper Rush got the ball out. But that was, again, Mike McCarthy showing confidence in his team. He didn't blink. Cooper Rush didn't blink. Mike McCarthy hasn't blinked since Dak Prescott was out. He's trying to win. He's playing to win. Yes, I got my backup quarterback in, but I'm not dumbing down this offense. I'm not dumbing down how I play to win and play conservatively because I got a backup in. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to play to win, and that's what he's doing. And that, this goes so much for the team and their confidence and how they feel and what they're trying to do. So give him credit. Now, at the end of the day, we all know it's how they do in the playoffs and what matters.
Absolutely. Stephen Jones said it. He said it. How are we going to do in the playoffs?
Yeah, they've done this before, and yes, but so even if Dak would have been there, it was always about what they did in the playoffs. The regular season is not the issue. It's moving on in the playoffs, and the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy is setting themselves up. You're going to get some guys back. You're going to get Dak back. November, December, the Cowboys, the young guys have grown up. You're going to have, a good, reps with Tyler Smith and Jason Peters and some of these guys are going to really, be comfortable in their situations. He set themselves up to play their best football later. Let's be honest. The Cowboys schedule, well, we thought it was easy. Like Jacksonville is pretty good right now.
This always happens. Whatever we thought the schedule was going to be, it never turns out that way because no one knows. And that's a 3-point league that Jacksonville playing well. We shouldn't be surprised. I mean, law of averages eventually is going to work out for you. Trevor Lawrence looks like a player. All right, let's wrap this up here real quick. Last question, 15 seconds. Cowboys, Washington, give me a winner or a loser.
Oh, Cowboys own the NFC East right now until further notice. I mean, they've won
Cowboys
7 straight games.
That is a noon kickoff. I predict the Cowboys will kick the living crap out of Carson Wentz and the Commanders, and the NFL will do everything they can to get Dan Snyder out of owning that franchise. Thank you for the great people at Window Nation for riding with us here on Cowboys Overtime. For all of your Cowboys coverage needs, check us out on StarTelegram.com. See you next week. Bye, Clarence.